everyone, Pam Morgan here. Welcome back to Reverse. In one of my women's conference topics, Extreme Makeover Inside Edition, I highlight 1 Samuel 16, verse 7 and verse 12. Let's start in verse 7. Let's read the whole thing in its entirety. But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." This is such an encouragement to me. But in order for us to really see what it says, we have to back up and get a little context here. This is when Samuel was going to anoint the new king. Saul had messed up, and we're going to get a new king. And so God sent him to Jesse. Jesse had many sons, and Jesse was to call all of his sons to go to the sacrifice, where Samuel would then go down the line and pick a new king. Well, all of them got cleaned up, as was required of them to get cleaned up before they went to the sacrifice. They all lined up. Samuel went down, and he said, "Surely this must be God's anointed. He's tall, he looks great, he looks kingly." But God said, "No, don't look at his appearance or his height. This isn't the one." So in essence, he went through all of them, and God rejected them all. And so Samuel asked Jesse, "Are these all the sons you have?" And Jesse said, "No, the youngest is still in the field. He's tending sheep." So Samuel went, told him to get him, and he did. He got him and brought him right from the field to the sacrifice for Samuel to see. Well, that's where we pick it up in verse 12. He said, "So he sent and had him brought in. He was ruddy, with a fine appearance and handsome features." Well, this youngest son, many of you may know by now, is David. David just came from the field tending sheep, and he probably didn't smell too good. He probably didn't look too good. And for us to realize what it's actually saying here, we need to dig back into the Hebrew, because you know what? As I looked into this, when I first started studying it, it just bothered me. It seemed like it was a contradiction. But I know God doesn't contradict himself in Scripture. So I did some digging. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, but I love my lexicon. And if we go back to the Hebrew, especially in the New King James Version, it words it a little bit differently. It says that David was ruddy. Now, the Hebrew word for ruddy means red. And that is a derivative of the Hebrew word that means to flush or to blush. And so that gives us a little insight right there, but let's keep going. And it says that not only did he have a fine appearance, but it says in the New King James that his eyes were bright and beautiful. And the Hebrew word there is simply means it's used figuratively for his countenance. It is an outward reflection of his inner being, his inner purity. And then it says that he is good looking, or of handsome features, as the NIV says. But that good looking, it isn't really an outward appearance at all. It means that he was pleasing, or that he was to be pleased. So God was pleased with what he saw in David. And that is the key. David knew he had no business being there. He didn't smell the part. He didn't look the part. He wasn't cleaned up to be in front of God's servant, Samuel, and to be in front of God himself. He had no business being there, and so he blushed. And that was a reflection of the humble heart in David. And that's what God found pleasing. Friends, I hope that is an encouragement to you and lets you know how much God values a humble heart. As always, if your busy life is leading you away from the Bible, it's time to reverse. Thanks again so much to our friends at Patreon. If you're not part of our Patreon community yet, what are you waiting for? Head on over to patreon.com/PNPMorgan and join the team. Until next week, sayonara.